I was wrong. I admit it. I'll gladly admit it. We're on to the next round. It's honestly unbelievable. We have not been the embarrassment, the disappointment that I thought we would be. It's wonderful. Now, before I get into this video, I actually have a challenge for you guys. It's pretty simple. Basically, if we can get my Instagram to 10,000 followers before Christmas, I'll give away 20 World Cup shirts. 20 different lucky winners will be able to choose from all 32 teams, or at least we'll definitely try to. Some of them might be a little more complicated than others, but we'll make it happen. But yeah, that's pretty simple. The challenge is just to get to 10,000 followers on Instagram. Good luck. Now, here's a very quick recap before we go into the Iran match. The US kicked off their World Cup campaign against Wales, where the team looked bright and scored just 35 minutes in. However, in the second half, the US failed to grasp any momentum they had and squandered the result. Next was the long-awaited match against England. Berhalter versus Southgate. The US were the better team throughout, with England actually playing like they were scared of us, despite the talent they have. However, in the end, the match ended in a 0-0 draw after some dull football in the second half. Which brings us to the final match against Iran. With just 1 point separating the two nations, this game would decide who went through. The US needed a win in order to make the last 16, while all the Iranians needed was a draw. Now, before the match, there was actually a bit of tension. It all started when the US social media team posted a graphic of the groups. You'll notice that Iran's flag doesn't have that emblem that you usually see on their flags nowadays. This was in solidarity with the current protests happening in Iran, since most protesters are actually trying to avoid flying the flag of the current regimes. And as a result, this one graphic of a group infuriated many. But if you notice, there weren't many of the tens of thousands of protesters speaking out in support of the US graphic. That's because the Iranian government shut down the internet a few months ago. Trust me though, that's not the only way the Iranian government has tried to suppress the message. This graphic though managed to catch the eye of Iranian state-run media and the government. As a result, there were actually calls for the US to be removed from the World Cup because of this graphic. And the press conference for this match was insane. There were geopolitical questions made by the Iranian state media asking why the US players haven't spoken out against shit like the American military. And keep in mind, if you may have forgotten, these are footballers we're talking about, not diplomats. Tyler Adams, though, actually got asked a really good question about the discrimination African Americans face in the US. An absolutely valid question that needs to be asked, as this country does face a lot of racial prejudice. However, let's not forget that the Iranian state-run media was using this as a way to deflect from the multitudes of human rights violations in their own country. But Tyler Adams' response to the question was an absolute 10 out of 10. Fantastic.
My apologies on the mispronunciation of your country. Yeah, that being said, you know, there's discrimination everywhere you go. You know, one thing that I've learned, especially from living abroad in the past years and having to fit in different cultures, is that in the U.S. we're continuing to make progress every single day. I grew up in a white family with obviously an African American heritage and background as well. So I had a little bit of different cultures, and I was very easily able to assimilate in different cultures. So you know, not everyone has that ease and the ability to do that, and obviously it takes longer to understand. And through education, I think it's super important. Like you just educated me now on the pronunciation of your country. So yeah, it's a process. I think as long as you see progress, that's the most important thing.
Listen, I get it. No one wants to hear politics in sports, but they're basically intertwined at this point. Especially if the Iranian regime is literally trying to use the national team for its own good. The players in their first match did not sing the anthem out of protest, and in response, the government is forcing them to sing it by threatening their families. So f your key politics out of sports comments. I'm not having it. Anyways, back to the football. Greg Berhalter again hits with his starting 11s. This has been something that we never saw in qualifiers, so this is a pleasant surprise. Nothing particularly changed besides the fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers finally was starting. Also, Josh Sargent, or the Ginger Pele as I like to call him, was back in the starting 11 as well. The match began in just 10 minutes played. Yunus Musa lobs one up to Preston Pulisic, but the header doesn't have enough power. The US continued to absolutely dominate the Iranians, and then in the 37th minute, our brave commander-in-chief puts his balls on the line for his country and scores. Now that is a man I want leading my country to battle. Pulisic, though, did end up getting injured, and he was subbed off at the beginning of the second half. Tim Weah nearly doubled the lead right before halftime. However, he was about an anometer offside. But at halftime, we could be very happy with that performance. The defense was indestructible, having not conceded a single Iranian shot. And the midfield of McKennie, Musa, and Tyler Adams was cooking as per usual. The attack could definitely use some work, but either way, we're still 1-0 up. Now, with 45 minutes to go, all we needed to do was maintain control of this match, maintain the momentum we had in this match, and just see it through. Brenden Aaronson was brought on for an injured President Pulisic in the second half, and immediately he made an impact, leading to a chance for the Ginger Pele. After that opportunity, though, Greg Berhalter went full Greg Berhalter. See, normally when you're that dominant in the first half that the opposing team doesn't even get a shot off, you want to make sure that that momentum is maintained. But it appears that Greg Berhalter's name isn't actually Matthew, it's Destroyer of Momentum. The US were slowly playing more and more defensive with every kick of the ball, and it practically invited Iran back into the match. Don't get me wrong, Iran did improve in the second half, but we made them look way better than they actually were. Just to make things worse, Josh Sargent, who was working his ass off the whole game, gets injured. He's subbed off for Haji Wright. Which transitions to my next issue with Greg Berhalter during this entire World Cup: his substitutes. He's been doing well with the starting 11s, and his tactics are pretty decent, albeit the individual talent making them look even better. But his substitutions have killed off games for the US in the second half. In the Wales match, we had Kellen Acosta, Shaq Moore, Jordan Morris go on, and it killed us. Against England, we had Shaq Moore come on. Serginho Dest was doing just fine. We could have kept him and continued having good attacking play. And again, it happened in the Iran match. First, Berhalter takes off Weston McKennie and brings on Kellen Acosta. And I'm not saying Kellen Acosta isn't worthy of the team. I'm just saying that when you're trying to control a match, Weston McKennie will do that much better than Kellen Acosta. But then came the 82nd minute. Shaq Moore makes a third appearance, and then Tim Weah comes off for Walker Zimmerman? I think it's pretty fair to point out the fact that Shaq Moore has actually had more minutes than our most talented player, Gio Reyna. Listen, I get wanting to protect the lead, but when you have Brenden Aaronson basically running for his life on every single counterattack, it doesn't make any sense, because then they just get the ball back, have as much as the ball as they want, and it's just a recipe for disaster. So throughout the last 20 minutes, the game was even tighter, and we nearly paid the price in stoppage time twice, but in the end, the US just edged past the Iranians 1-0, doing once again the bare minimum. But a win is a win, and I am damn proud of these players. Listen, do we have the best tactics? Absolutely not, but what we do have is a great mentality. One thing that I feel kind of gets forgotten every single time we enter a World Cup is mentality. You always have to have that belief that you belong there, and also you're not there just to be there. The US mentality has been fantastic. They have gone out there and believed that they could win every single match. And it's not just us. You've seen multiple upsets. Japan beating Germany, Saudi Arabia beating Argentina. Hell, Australia got out of their group. No one considered Australia a third place candidate in their group, let alone the f***ing last 16. But once again, that midfield, oh, I love it so much. It's been so fun to watch. Captain Tyler Adams was the brilliant defensive outlet that you'd expect him to be. Yunus Musa was also putting in the work. He was tracking back a lot. He won 4 tackles, and that man was an absolute baller. Cameron Carter-Vickers and Tim Ream, fantastic in the back. Please keep this back line. Especially keep Tim Ream, because that man has changed the defense for the better. Serginho Dest was great. I usually am a little critical about him, especially when it comes to defending, but he was good, and he assisted the winning goal. But of course, plaudits have to go to Mr. President himself, the man who sent us to the last 16. Christian Pulisic was fired up, and him putting his nuts on the line is the reason why we're moving forward. He did come off injured, as we mentioned before, and it's been confirmed he has a pelvic contusion. His status at the moment is day-to-day, so we'll just have to see in the coming days. But the fact that over 5 years ago, this was the only image you associated with Pulisic in US soccer, it's been amazing seeing him grow as a player both abilities-wise and mentality-wise. He used to be the new kid on the block getting bullied by every single opponent known to man. Now he doesn't take anyone's shit. It was only right that this was the player to send the US to the next round. I genuinely can't wait for the next generation to appear and recall the moment Pulisic sent us to the knockouts. Also, I do hope all Iranian fans, players, and families get home safe. Keep up the fight, guys. But with that win, we see ourselves advancing to the round of 16 where we play the Netherlands. Serginho Dest will actually be playing the national team he could have played for, but instead opted for the US. Now, quick analysis of the Netherlands. Outside of quite literally Cody Gakpo, this team has been kinda flat. They got lucky that Senegal basically left their finishing and crossing accuracy back home, and the Dutch also barely escaped the Ecuadorians, who were dominating that match. So with that being said, despite the US having a pretty underwhelming attack, we have a pretty decent chance. It might be the hopium, but having watched the Netherlands twice, they don't look that incredibly convincing. And remember, they got eliminated by the Czech Republic in the Euros in the last 16. On paper, this team should be beating us. It is the World Cup though, and we've seen in the past so much magic happen. Why can't it happen again? But it's so great to go from having such low expectations, thinking that this team would finish last, like many thought they would, to skyrocketing to this point where it actually feels like I can have hope. Also, thanks to the Netherlands underachieving. But you know, it's still hope. And another thing, this is one of my favorite things about the World Cup, especially when the US are playing in it actually. Because since 2010, when I've experienced the US being in a World Cup, there's just this cloud of World Cup fever that covers the country until we inevitably get eliminated. You just see all these people, whether they're fans of the sport, fans of the team or not, celebrating this team. And I think that's just so beautiful about why the World Cup is what it is. Obviously, you have to acknowledge all the atrocities that FIFA has done to make this happen, but when it comes to the actual game and the fan culture around it, it's truly just beautiful. It's why I've always said that international football will always be better than club football. There's just this unique feeling that I don't think you can really feel with club football as much. And it's that sense of belonging and that sense of togetherness. Anyways though, enough of what tangent I just went over. The match will be this Saturday. I'll be watching it with some friends. It'll be a fun time. Hopefully, just hopefully, we can win and advance to the quarterfinals, because that would be absolutely magical. I never got to experience 2002, so if that happens, then god damn it, man. I'll be the happiest man on the earth when it comes Saturday if we actually do win. But of course, a massive shout out to all our patrons, including Janos Balash, Sentily Hank Dennis, Elfavi, Miliway009, Aldipu, Alex Rod, Alta, Amin Suarez, Aresan, Daniel Ortiz, Francisco Hernandez, iShadow Ninja, Juan Leras, Miguel Munoz, Wiendi Mintang, Return Fire, Rory Burns, Sauce, Subscribe to Tendetem, The Motor Drive, Tomicus, Vanilla Mexican 17, Victor, Carlos Anaya, Chris Damasceno, David Dunn, Declan Malloy, Dominic Griffin, Emmett Shea, Lewis, Joe Aparicio, Jordan Clavet, Mohamed Albalkhail, MX Wee, Patrick Barley, President Pulisic, Unbroken Persona, and the Q-Fam. If you'd like to join the Patreon, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you'd like. Remember, get my Instagram to 10,000 followers and I'll give away 20 World Cup shirts. You can follow my Twitch, my semi-active Twitch. We actually just did a watch-along for the USA-Iran match, and hopefully I'll be able to do more as I've recovered from this sickness. I also forgot about the TikTok, which we've hit 15,000, so thank you for that. Let's go for 20,000. But until then, I'll see you guys.